before, is more important than any of these grants that are out here because it's long-term. We have to look at the big target in mind. That's how we're going to take care of our own state with fiscal funding and whatever. So all this stuff we do today, remember, we need to do this to make sure our money is spent wisely, correctly, but the long range is really with our 2261 Quality Ed Council getting that thing straightened out. If not, we're going to be in another crisis in a couple of years, or maybe this year, without federal money to bail us out. So just kind of keep that in mind. We've talked about these things. Obviously, from the agency point of view, we want to maximize our money from the the formula-driven side as well as from the competitive side. And just briefly here, I want to take a couple seconds just to go over a couple on the competitive side. In the statewide longitudinal data systems, the 12 things listed at the bottom of the page are very important because they're the criteria to get this grant. We're almost there. We've got, I think, all of them in pretty good shape with the exception number 5, and that has a lot to do with the SAT, ACT, and privacy laws back and forth. We're working on that. But our data system with CDERS now is robust, in better shape than many, and frankly is underrated by the feds. So we're really confident we're going to get the grant for the longitudinal data systems, and we feel pretty good about how we're going to be able to take our K-20 and make it even better. So just a note, we're in pretty good shape on that, better than probably you may be reading about. Now, the Innovation or I3 grants. This is the one I got to spend a minute on here for all of you. There'll be more in the breakout. But this is the one that you guys, LEAs, districts can go ahead and apply for. There's $650 million out there for innovative ideas. Now, I've been around the state a little bit, and other than one group I know in 189 that's got a thing going with Western and some STEM stuff in science and technology, engineering, and math, I haven't heard a lot of interest in this. $650 million across the country, if we take 2% of that, which is Washington, that's about $13 million. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to get that money in a proportional manner, but take a look at this, and ESDs alone maybe can do a little bit of gelling of interest in this and maybe get some coalitions to go ahead and prepare to apply. The regs for this should be out later this month or November. There'll be a timeline, but this is the money that does not go through the SCA, does not go through us. It's for LEAs, districts, nonprofits, charters to go ahead and go after on innovative things. Just a note to you, but I have not heard much stirring about that across the state, and I want you to stir because you've got great ideas out there that can be funded in that category. And then finally, Race to the Top. As Zolly said earlier, there was, I think, 1,100 responses at 5 to 50 pages each. You probably got 15,000 pages of your reading pleasure if you'd like to take a look at those on the EdGov website. I mean, that's how much interest there is in Race to the Top across the country here. Obviously, we've got the 4 assurances we've gone through. I'm not going to talk about the detail here because I will mention that in our breakout sessions, but I do want to make sure we understand a few things about Washington's grant, and that is this. This graph from the New Teacher Project has pretty well been put forth across the state. And it shows, if you look at the graph, that we are like 4th out of 5th in terms of where we stand in terms of our policy framework to go ahead and go for the Race to the Top grant. So you look here and say, that's not very good. And I'll go over a little bit why that's not very good. But first of all, they underrated our data system. That's going to push us up to the first one. And then we think we've got a chance to do some policy things between now and the end of the legislative session that's going to go ahead and put us in better shape. But no question about it, if you look at the United States of America and you look at Race to the Top and you look at Duncan's priorities, you've all read about them, clearly the red states, the southern states are in a little bit better shape. They tend to be have less strong unions, less strong, they have a little more responses on some of their policy initiatives, and they're in better shape to get the money in Race to the Top. They probably will get the first several grants in Race to the Top, but we feel like we've got a pretty good shot to go ahead and get at least a round 2 grant, and again, I'll invite you to my session or Lisa McFarland's session to learn more about that. Okay, here are some struggles we have, and these little section numbers and whatever really come out of the draft regs on Race to the Top. Here's some problems, and the first one's the biggest one. Differentiating teacher and principal effectiveness based on student growth and using that data for compensation, evaluation, and tenure decisions. Many of you have been in this room or been in this business as long as I have. These are huge policy situations we're talking about. You all bargain with your teachers association. You know what that can mean. Tenure, those things have been talked about a lot. There are conversations going on with WA about that. Where this is going to go, we don't know, but we have a leadership in the governor's office to take a look at these policy initiatives to see if we can find some middle ground that'll work for us. Ensure equitable distribution of effective teachers and principals. This gets at the issue of low-performing schools not having as quality teachers as high-performing schools. We all know that's a problem, particularly in larger districts where you can kind of, well, I'll leave it at that. But the point of the matter is that's one we need to attack. Number 3, report effectiveness of teacher and principal prep programs. The concept there is that where our teachers come from, those colleges need to get feedback about how well our teachers do in criteria that includes student performance. That's another big one. The 4th one, intervening in the lowest performing schools. This is Janelle's work, but the real issue there is we don't have authority to go ahead and have required action. It's all voluntary to this point. We are in the process right now with the State Board of Education of teeing up some legislation that will go ahead and give us the authority for required action in schools that are consistently poor performing over a long period of time. And then the last one is a charter school issue, which we're not going to get around logically. It's been defeated in Washington by 3 different times. But we can also go ahead and point with pride to many of our alternative programs that are all around the state that really do well and are really charter schools under a public initiative with the same rules we have. We have a lot of great things going on outside of comprehensive high schools in terms of skill centers, some of our STEM schools. I could mention a list of them, but we think we can at least make the argument that we have a lot of alternatives in Washington that just aren't labeled charter schools. So those are the basic policy problems you hear about a lot, but this is not dead on arrival. There really is an opportunity to go ahead and get this money. We'll spend a little more time in our breakout session chatting about that. Okay, the steering committee is formed by 3 groups by the Race to the Top grant. It is the governor's office, SBE, and OSPI. And as Judy said earlier, Edie Harding from the state board, the executive director, and I and Judy are really involved in that work, and we'll again have more detail in the breakouts. Our work groups, we're doing the 4 assurances, plus we have work groups set up to start with in dropout prevention, STEM, Core 24, and the achievement gap. Again, more information coming on that, but it should whet your appetite a bit. We are seeking private funding for consultant help. We hope to have that announcement soon, but we are confident. You may have heard Gates is funding a number of states, and we do think we're going to be able to get some funding for this effort. Our deadline, however, in round 1, which we're going to go for, we haven't publicly said that, but I'll just tell you out here, that's the scenario, is middle of December. And if you think about coming up with a multi-million-dollar, I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars, $200 million program that's comprehensive that hits this grant in 2 months, it's an enormous task. And all I can tell you is I will ask for your help, and again, more detail in the breakouts, but we really are going to have help from the group to get this grant in good shape by mid-December. And then finally, we're going to be doing the solicitation of proposals and work group meetings, more details in the breakout on that as well, too. So that's Race to the Top. Judy, do you want to say anything about that, or would you like to, the governor? Yeah, I'd like to have Judy come up and just kind of finish up a little bit here about the governor's role in this particular competitive grant process.
Thank you, Alan. Just to piggyback on a couple of things that Alan said and that I said earlier this morning in our conversation, we are doing a number of wonderful things in this state, and we have made a lot of progress even with our current funding situation in our schools. And it is Alan's and Edie's and my direction off of our bosses to use what we have done and where we are headed to create our Race to the Top proposal, in essence. So we want to build on the work that has been underway. So for instance, some of those challenge areas that Alan pointed out, the Professional Educator Standards Board has done some work that we can piggyback on to meet some of the requirements in that area. The state board with regard to their accountability proposals, the work that Janelle's been doing with the assistance to the lowest performing schools. We want to build on what we're doing, not recreate the wheel. We want to use work groups that are already working in those areas to refine proposals, pull together data, etc. Then